What's up, y'all? It's your girl Amanda, and welcome to another episode of the Dope Confidence Podcast. What do? I bring you amazing individuals, dope queens, dope kings that have carved their own path that sometimes turn their pain into purpose. And I'm excited to have a conversation with Cher Anderton, and she is a passionate speaker, an author of Could It Be Better, a consultant and a therapist, and a woman that lives by this philosophy: own your discomfort so it doesn't own you. Y'all, this is going to be a great conversation. So you know what you need to do. Save this, download it, share it, subscribe so you can be connected to this conversation. I'm going to bring her in the room. What's up, Cher? How are you?
Hi, Amanda.
How are you?
I'm well. I'm good.
I am so happy to have you here in this space, have this conversation with you, just to learn a little bit more about what you do and the philosophy that you live by. Because I don't know about y'all out there, but post-pandemic, we've gone through some discomfort. We may be still going through some discomfort. So Cher's going to be here to guide us through how we can own it and own our lives, but don't let the discomfort own us. Let me get that right. So Cher, tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Okay, so my through line of my work is that thread is the discomfort. So as a therapist, I help clients build the tools and strategies and do the healing and growing they need to manage discomfort. They're all tools and strategies that I have also practiced and am practicing. And then I love going into organizations and helping them navigate discomfort. So help them navigate change, interpersonal issues with employees, that sort of thing. And so I go into organizations and do that. Everything kind of began when I was introduced to social work, which is what I got my master's in. Years ago, we adopted an older kiddo from foster care. We have 3 biological children, and then met a kiddo that we just he was there, and
Wow.
kind of not worst case scenario. I always tell people, like, with adoption, we're like maybe 4th best
Okay.
case scenario for him. Best case scenario would have been that his parents could have cared for him well. Next best would have been, that family members could have cared for him. And then the 3rd best would have been a family who's like both his race and ethnicity, because he is Mexican and we are white. And so that would have been the next best case scenario, I think. And so we're kind of 4th best, but that process really introduced me to social work and wanting to become a therapist. We had such a hard time finding a therapist who saw kids and who was adoption informed and trauma informed. And so just kind of led me on this path to do that. Worked in education for a while as a social worker and school counselor, and just have kind of followed, again, this thread of leaning into discomfort and trying different and new things and challenging myself in really wild ways. Sometimes to failure, meaning like it hasn't gone super well, and other times it's in the failure, I'm not even mad about that. It's learning for me, but it's just been a weird and windy path, and sometimes hard to describe in a short amount of time. I'm just gonna stop now.
Wow.
A lot of trailheads to follow there.
Yeah, I mean, just the journey of you and your family adopting a child. And how old was he when you guys adopted him?
He was just shy of 8 years old.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, big story.
Yeah, and that's a whole nother podcast right there. Like, wow.
Yeah, and I'd be happy to talk about the process, not his story,
Yeah.
but definitely, yeah, the process itself. And I have very, very mixed feelings about adoption in general. So that would be an entirely different podcast. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But in your experience of deciding to be a therapist, to be a mental health professional, deciding to adopt a child at 8 years old, I know that you have experienced some discomfort, because that's what you talk about. That's your keynote speech, is about owning your discomfort so it doesn't own you. Why is this philosophy a big part of who you are, and how did it become?
Yeah. So in all of the things, we experience discomfort that we choose, and then we also experience a lot of discomfort we don't choose. And what I found is that if I think that the discomfort that I don't choose, the things that just happened to me or happened to us,
Mm-hmm.
if I think that that's going to prepare me necessarily for leaning into other challenges that I do choose, like having like consent to,
Mm-hmm.
I've just been wildly thrown off by that. Meaning it hasn't happened. Like I had a really rough, not really rough. I've had significant childhood trauma, a lot of things happening health wise and family wise and that sort of thing. And it wasn't until I chose to run a marathon in my early 20s that I was like, oh, this is the first time I picked something hard for me, that
Hmm.
I chose for myself. And I saw through that pathway and then making choices after that, that when I chose challenging things and was able to consent to it, learn from it, build more skills and strategies, it trained me much better for the stuff that I couldn't choose, because
Mm.
life is that, right? We have a lot of things happening to us that we don't
Mm-hmm.
choose still. It was just a better training ground for it. And I do believe that we give a lot of power to discomfort. That's why I talk about owning it so it doesn't own you,
Mm-hmm.
because we'll avoid discomfort at all costs as humans sometimes,
Yeah.
in really unhelpful, disconnecting ways. When in reality, it's not the discomfort that's usually uncomfortable, it's the stories that we tell ourselves about the discomfort
Mm.
that knock us flat and keep
Mm-hmm.
us away from that. So everybody's got a story of discomfort. They avoid it at all costs. They ignore it, whatever it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
They try and get through it as quickly as possible, whatever it is, right? We all have a narrative around it, but if we're actually really intentional and present, that
Mm-hmm.
discomfort, like the most beautiful things in life for me have always come from some level of discomfort.
Mm. Wow.
So I just like to empower people to lean into it. And we need skills and strategies to do that, though. I can't just say,
Yes.
like, hey, do this really hard thing without, like, I love supporting people and building the skills that they need to manage it better.
Mm-hmm. And from a professional perspective, because we talk to entrepreneurs, aspiring entrepreneurs, those that are the side hustlers.
Yeah.
Um, we were having a conversation prior to the podcast about post pandemic, and how a lot of us have evolved or started over or begin again. Um, how how can we own that discomfort? Because I believe a lot of us still are not owning the discomfort from post pandemic. How can we own it as an entrepreneur? What does that process look like?
First of all, entrepreneurs are my people. That's just, we're just different in a lot of ways than entrepreneurs.
Right.
Good, some not so great sometimes. Um, uh, well, one, I have a framework that I developed that really kind of put it all into something that's easily, digestible or whatever. And I call it the Own It framework. So I talk about observing it.
Mm-hmm.
I talk about wielding it, which is our superpower to navigate it with more calm and confidence. Naming it, really identifying what our goals are and kind of breaking it down and how to get there.
Mm.
Implementing it, putting things into practice, because there are two different skill sets really, to know something and to do something. We
Okay.
all have a lot of knowledge about things. I know how much sleep I should get. I know what kind of food I should put in my mouth more often. I know, how to treat people kindly. Do I always do it? No, because knowing and doing are two different things. So we talk
Mm.
about actually implementing it and how putting those things into action can lead to a lot more clarity. And then lastly, training it. So back to that kind of training ourselves to navigate discomfort that we don't choose comes from consenting and choosing discomfort, picking things that challenge us and push at our edges and stretch our comfort zone over and over again. So eventually we get to this place where we can move through life and with more room. We take up more space in really lovely ways when
Yeah.
we stretch that comfort zone.
So it's a process of your framework of
Mm-hmm.
owning it. And give me those letters again, the acronym. O is
So,
for.
yeah, observe it,
Uh huh.
wield it, name it, implement it, train it.
Mm.
Yeah. And
I
each of
think
those are
that,
different podcasts.
right? Another one. But I think that's the hardest thing is like, um, it's the owning it. Like, okay, when we look at our failures as entrepreneurs, we have to own it. There's some decisions that we've made in the past that have resulted in the things that have happened today on our entrepreneurial journey that we really got to own it. Like, you got to own it. But I think that's where we get stuck is like we say, okay, it happened, but I'm stuck in replaying what happened and not being able to move forward. What are some of the tools that you can advise for entrepreneurs that are maybe stuck in that area right there?
Mhm. Yeah. Oh, a couple of things that I found really useful. One is being in community with people who are entrepreneurs as well, and that's something that's a little bit newer to me. Because my business structure was a little bit different when I lived up in Seattle. I'm now in Phoenix, and when we moved down here, the first year we were kind of getting our two youngest were getting settled in high school. We moved them in the middle of high school. We're very
Mm.
cruel parents, but it turned out really well. And then I wrote a book for a year, so I was kind of tucked in. Really wasn't in community with people. I'd met a few people. I actually got a Bumble BFF where you can find friends online,
Yeah.
uh, and it was really great. But starting last January, I started getting in community with people, joining chambers of commerce, connecting with this really great organization down here called Local First Arizona, and it's just folks with small to medium sized businesses, usually just really trying to make things work. And I've just found so much encouragement from being around people like that and seeing how they're doing that, and finding mentors and people who are willing to have conversations with you. And
Yes.
so being around people is super helpful. And then I think entrepreneurship for me in particular has been that and parenting probably have been the two things that have agitated the most, scratched at the most wounds, really, that
Mm.
um, and activated me in the way that I know I need to do some healing and growing. So for me, granted, I'm biased as a therapist myself, but I go to therapy, and I've hired coaches to help me navigate different aspects. So it's been an investment kind of in myself and my own healing and growing that has allowed me to expand more in other spaces like business and that sort of thing. So
Wow.
those would be two of my big ones: be in community with others and pay attention to those things that come up and get some help if you need it to heal and grow from them.
Do you think that, and I'm so glad we're having this conversation. Now, this is going to be a whole nother podcast, but um, I've talked to my friends that are entrepreneurs, and we talk about grieving a business that
Mm,
you had to close down, or maybe just things just didn't work out and it was good, but it's just, life has shifted and you had to close down a
yeah.
business. But we have this conversation about grieving a business, and a lot of our friends that are maybe 9 to 5ers don't understand that. And that's why
Mm,
I'm glad that you mentioned about community is so important, and having a mentor, have a good support system of people that can understand your journey. But let's talk about, from a therapy perspective as an entrepreneur, why do you think we feel such a great loss, like we've lost our identity when we have to close down a business?
And I think a lot of people identify with work, even like non-entrepreneurs. They're educators, like having worked in education. Educators very much identify as being an educator, and that's part of their identity.
Mm,
I think anytime we pour that much love and heart and time and sweat and all the things um, into something, we can identify with it more. And so it makes sense that it feels like a bigger loss when
mm-hmm.
something doesn't go well. Um, I do think, I do think too that there can be some healthier boundaries around that
Mm,
that we can have for ourselves, or on how much we identify with what we do. And that's my own work. How much do I identify as a therapist? How much do I
yeah.
identify as a speaker, an author, and who am I even without those things?
Mm-hmm.
If I didn't have any of that, who am I?
Yeah.
How do I want to move through life? That kind of thing. So I think a big part of it is just how much you pour into something. And also a lot of us as entrepreneurs we're the face and voice and all the things of our businesses. And
Yes.
so there's so much vulnerability there to put ourselves out there over and over and over again.
Yes.
So when we're more vulnerable in our professional life too, it can be it can just be harder and more of an emotional experience when something doesn't go well. It might bring up our own shame stories or our own
Mm,
loss stories or all kinds of things. Again, that I would just point people to, doing some healing and growing around that, because it's all just meant to help us level up.
yeah.
It's not meant to like drag us down and keep us sitting in the soup of the shame or embarrassment or loss. It's meant to like, okay, what do I take from this and take forward?
Mm-hmm.
So,
Mm-hmm. That's so true, and so helpful to entrepreneurs. For those of you guys that are starting over, that you don't have to stay there. You have to, like she said, learn from your experiences. And I think, like you said, I agree that some of our identities is so intertwined in our business. And I think, like, you're an entrepreneur.
yeah.
There was no book that said, okay, when you become an entrepreneur, this is what you need to do. You need to create healthy boundaries. You know what I mean? Like, you need
Yeah.
to remember that you are still, Cher, you're still Amanda if your business closes or if you shift and do something else. We don't
Mhm.
learn those things. And I think that's a conversation that needs to be had with entrepreneurs that are starting out. Like, it might be great to have a conversation, a group therapy conversation for entrepreneurs, honestly. um,
Yeah.
to kind of be preventative care, like we were talking about allergies. It's like the
Yeah.
preventative care of what you may face as an entrepreneur, but we want you to know that you can still get through this, but you still have to process it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the more we scale internally, like the more we get to know ourselves through the
Mm-hmm.
process, the easier it will be for businesses to be successful, or at least just even, and I would say that even for folks who have had to close down businesses, there are parts of my business that I've had to slough off, whether it's by my choice or by the choice of somebody else who I was in
Mm-hmm.
partnership with or whatever. And navigating through that, it we need tools and strategies, or we will just be knocked flat or spinning our wheels or on a hamster wheel, however you want to say it. I
Mm-hmm.
don't think we're meant to I don't think we're meant to feel like everything is so hard. And there are some skills that we can build. Really, essentially, just social emotional intelligence is
Yeah.
what I hope people develop, so that they can have different stories about challenges. They can experience it in different and better ways. With my tagline's kind of more calm and confidence, right?
Mm-hmm.
Using that superpower to navigate the uncomfortable with more calm and confidence. Like, who doesn't want more of that? Because it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't have to be so hard. And I think a lot of us have these stories around hard, and we're meant to experience a bit more ease, but
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot we have to do internally, individually, and a lot we have to do systemically in order to make that even possible for everybody.
And you spoke about calm and confidence, two words that we wouldn't even think go together. Talk about calm and confidence.
Yeah.
What does that look
Calm
like?
calm really refers to being grounded in your body.
Mm,
Um, just living in a more embodied way, anchored to yourself, anchored to your own trust. Like one of the main things I help folks develop is self trust. So, really trusting yourself to navigate things. Not that everything's going to be amazing in life, but hey, I trust myself to navigate this.
mm,
If I don't have the skills to navigate it, I'll figure it out because everything is figure outable.
mm-hmm.
We can do the things, right? Um, so is kind of what I refer to with calm, is just getting back into our bodies, because so many of us live in our heads, or even just not even in our bodies. We're dissociated and disconnected.
Hmm.
So using some of these strategies to get back into those bodies, that can be kind of an uncomfortable place for a lot of us, but we can learn how to be in there with that healing and growing more often, because that's where the wisdom is to even guide you in your business. Like you
Mm,
mentioned earlier, having no manual whatsoever for what a lot of us want to do. There might be little pieces that we can grab at, but the manual is really within. It's our
mm.
intuition. It's what guides us and calls us to do different things and follow these kind of certain pathways. So that's the calm piece. And then confidence, I mean, we just need to build more and more evidence for ourselves to be able to navigate life better. That's it. It's
Mm-hmm.
just building more and more evidence, and using that as kind of a touchstone and an anchor when
Yes.
things are feeling tricky. It's just like, oh, well, I've done hard things before. I may not
Mm-hmm.
do this perfectly. I might flub up here and there. Oh, okay. And I'm going to still move forward and build that confidence and build on it.
I love that we have the manual within, and to
Hmm.
anchor ourselves. And so many times, our failures or when things don't work out overshadow the accomplishments that we've made
Mm.
as entrepreneurs, as professionals, even in our careers. Those shadows of failure overshadow, like I said, the things that we've accomplished. How do we get rid of those clouds
Mm.
that seem to, especially when things, don't work out in the time frame that we want them to? It seems like the clouds start gathering a little bit more and kind of just like overshadow, what we're trying to accomplish or achieve.
Yeah, definitely can. And I think one of the main main strategies that I love to invite people into the space is curiosity. Get
Hmm.
curious about it. What's in this for me? What's mine? What's not mine? And whatever the situation is, um, just asking helpful questions, not why me, but or why is this happening? That is one of the least helpful questions in the way we usually ask it. Like if you're really asking, like, why is this happening for me? That's a
Hmm.
little, just one word shifts it, and that feels better than why is this happening to me?
I love that.
So shifting something, just like asking helpful questions, and then curiosity is really linked to um, the reward centers of our brain.
Okay.
So the reward centers are the one that kind of emit the really yummy chemicals and hormones that we want more of, dopamine, serotonin, all those things. And so when we're curious, whether it's a parenting situation, I do parent coaching, and it's often like, okay, let's get curious and do some detective work. That
Mm.
alone starts kind of down regulating our nervous systems. So then we can kind of access what I need to, what the manual within, right? If we're
Mm-hmm.
dysregulated, it's really hard to access intuition. We're
Mm-hmm.
most likely going to be in fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. So we want to be regulated and make decisions from that regulated space. So curiosity is just like a little secret weapon that I love. Everybody's got it. We
Yeah.
just have to kind of flip into it, turn it on.
Yeah, tap into it. Man, I love this. Where were you when I closed down my business? Where were you at, Cher? How come I
Where
didn't meet you then?
where was I for my younger self? It all it comes up in your life when it's meant to. So here
Girl, where were you?
we are. Here we are. you
Oh
know?
my gosh. This is so helpful. I know that you guys are enjoying this conversation. I love this. Why did it happen to me? Why did it happen for me?
Hmm.
For me, that one little word just changes your perspective, gives you a fresh perspective on your life. And I
Yeah.
asked you this question, which happens to be the name of your book.
Yeah.
Could it be better? Share.
Yes. Anything can always be better. Yeah.
Could it be better? You have a
And, and,
book.
and yeah, and not in that hustling way. I think we kind of spoke a little
Yeah.
bit in a pre-conversation, but I really like, I know that can come across to some people as like, well, Cher, you're just never satisfied. Everything could be, if you think
Mm,
everything could be better, but it's really, it's a curiosity of like, what could be better? Like, could it be? What could be
mm,
better about this? What could I think, say, or do that could make this experience feel a bit better? Because I think all of us could be a lot less miserable. Um, and really kind of shifting into that space of like what could be better in this space,
mm-hmm.
and from a grounded space, not a side hustle, I have to work so hard and nothing's ever good enough kind of thing. It's
Yeah.
not perfectionist.
And so, what's your approach? Give us just a few nuggets on what's your approach to could it be better, experiencing more joy and connection in relationships.
Yeah, so I kind of here's a little insight into how I came up with that tagline. What I have found in my work with folks is that we will often go above and beyond for other people. So, for example, when I do parent education,
Mm-hmm.
we've experimented with, headlines of what this presentation is about. Cher's coming in to talk to parents about, whatever, challenging behavior, for example. What if I said to parents, hey, we're going to focus on you and how you can manage your behavior better so that then you can help your kids, fewer people show up.
Of course, this is not
If
me.
I said,
It's my kid.
hey, your kiddo is having a huge tantrum, how can you help navigate, challenging behavior or sassy teens or whatever it is?
Mm-hmm.
Parents are lining up at the door. And then I'm like, hey, by the way, we're going to start with you. Because
What?
so, yeah, so the book it's about relationships, but it doesn't dive into relationships from the get go. The whole first part of the book is called self discovery. It's about getting to know yourself and what you bring to relationships so that you can then better manage relationships. And then I pull in the last part of the book, which is a shorter section. It's on my favorite relationship strategies. And so it can be used in friendships, it can be used in partners with your kiddos or whatever. So that's kind of the trajectory of the book. The beginning is just like, let's get to know you, like get to know yourself,
Mm-hmm.
and then you'll know what you're bringing to the table and how to manage it, those parts of you and those experiences in relationship.
Mm.
So that's really what the book is about. It's about building your social emotional intelligence, getting to know yourself better, and then relationships as a byproduct just get better because you're more skilled managing your own kind of internal world.
Wow. And I think it's a step or path that some people don't want to take. And like we were talking pre-conversation about, being in the pandemic, me living alone, how I really kind of was forced to learn who I am and what I enjoy and what I don't want in my life and what, adjustments I need to make as a person. And that's a journey that a lot of us don't want to take or maybe don't take until we're kind of pushed into it.
Yep.
So talk about the benefits of taking that courageous step of self-discovery.
I it's that's a very big question. So let me see if
Yeah.
I can kind of break it down. So the path of self-discovery, the benefits are, I just think they're infinite, really. So
Mm,
we all kind of, like you mentioned, have our impetus to doing this work. So when I entered parenting a long time ago, I had some good ideas of what I didn't want to do, just because of how I was raised. but I didn't have any new replacement skills or strategies. So what did I do in moments of of dysregulation? I reverted to what I knew.
Mm-hmm.
And so I learned, and the really the biggest push, I did made some changes with our biological kiddos. And then when we adopted, any sort of like firm voice, like what we call like a parent tone, right? Like a
Okay.
mom tone, like, hey,
Mm-hmm.
da 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 da.
Yeah.
That was so triggering for him. Even like
Mm.
certain eye contact, looks, tones were, I could just see his nervous system get so activated. And I was like, that is not going to happen on my watch. This
Mm.
is safety. Like, our job is to create safety so that our kids can blossom and live these full whole lives. And if he is so dysregulated because I'm just using my everyday mom voice with him, which my biological kids, were they bothered by it? No. Did they like it when it got better? Sure,
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
for him, it just wasn't okay. And so I was like, this needs to turn around real quick. So I dove into just skill building, reading some really helpful parenting books before we adopted him. I'd read a bunch of really helpful adoption books about adoption.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was really helpful. But we all kind of have to just find what our buy-in is. For me, it was parenting.
Okay.
I chose to be a parent. I really wanted to do things differently and better
Yeah.
in a lot of ways. And so what is your buy-in? So figuring out what that is. And then when you have that buy-in, then it's easier to get to know those kind of tougher parts of ourselves. It's
Mm.
just a part of ourselves that wants to not let us see the hard shadowy parts,
Yeah.
the wounded parts, right?
Mm-hmm.
But we, as our kind of higher adult selves, those are often like childlike parts. We can say, hey, this is the direction we're going to go. And like, we're safe. We're
Yeah.
doing this. It can feel really unsafe sometimes being an entrepreneur or putting ourselves out there or whatever it is. But I can create safety
Mm-hmm.
for myself and lean into it. And I can't even list all of the benefits of doing that kind of work. It's like moving through life, loving on every and accepting every part of yourself.
Mm.
Like, I mean,
Yes.
what could be better than that?
Yes.
So, and we're all such beautiful, beautiful humans. We can't also know those beautiful parts if we don't also know the parts that carry a lot of wounds. And most of them, the wounds that we carry weren't our own, like it wasn't our fault, but it's our responsibility, I think,
Mm-hmm.
as adults to take care of those parts and do the healing and growing because it just benefits every person you interact with, every part of your business.
Mm.
um, People want to be around you, they want to be connected to you because you're so centered and grounded in yourself.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be that way all the time, but if we're like that most of the time, that's a really different energy than this like anxious kind of hustling kind of energy that
Mm-hmm.
we can often carry, especially as entrepreneurs or parents.
Yeah. And it
So,
circles back to, what you speak about, the calm and confidence. It
mhm.
circles back to that part. And
Yeah.
we have to do the hard work because it's important because we're important. And
Hmm.
we can benefit it, from every area of our life, like you said. And I'm just really glad that I was able to have this conversation with you. It's just so enlightening for me as an entrepreneur, for me as a person, and to own the discomfort. I've learned that through a process of having conversation with my therapist friends, and
Hmm.
then my own self-discovery and healing is learning how to own it so it doesn't own me. And I thank you for just speaking to my audience today and enlightening us. And we need to have more conversations as entrepreneurs in this space, to be
Yeah.
able to have a safe space to have conversations about what we're struggling with, things that we need to take a deeper look at that could possibly be holding us back from being successful, not just as a person, but as an entrepreneur, as a business person. So I thank you so much for your time, Cher.
Yeah, I'm very happy to have this conversation with you. Thanks,
Yeah.
Amanda.
Yeah, thank you. I have one more question for you before we
Yes.
go. If you could speak to the younger Cher, what would you
Mm.
tell her?
Well, I do talk to younger shares a lot.
Love that.
I do. I I what I say to them the most often is that, I'm not going anywhere, and I love you, and you're safe, because so many of
Mm,
them feel really unsafe, and that provides a lot of stability internally when I'm connected to those parts, because they get activated for sure. They get triggered in different ways. And if I just like tend to them, and hey, who's feeling scared? Who's feeling super anxious? Who's whatever? What can I do for you? It's kind of that
yeah.
reparenting inner child kind of model. Um, but I just mostly tell my younger selves that I love them and that they're safe, and that goes a
Mm,
long way.
yeah, I love it. Such a comforting conversation. A lot of calmness and definitely confidence with you today, Cher. So, y'all check out Cher. All of her information is going to be in the show notes. Connect with her, and she will guide you on the path of owning it. And once you own it, oh my gosh, it's limitless. Your possibilities are limitless.
Absolutely.